Namaste and greetings. I, Bhanvi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI #webpolicylearning. Today, we are gathered here for day one of a 4-week online certificate training course on ending violence against women, awareness of laws and policies in India. This training program is organized by the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. At the very outset, let me give you a brief background on this certification course. The Constitution of India guarantees equality, justice, liberty, and a life with dignity to every citizen. There is a set of laws enacted to deal with the situation of crime against women. Besides provisions being listed in the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Civil Procedure Code, certain specific laws are enacted to deal with the situation of crime against women, such as Dowry Prohibition Act 1961, the Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act 2005, the Sexual Harassment of Women and Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act 2013, and so on. Yet, the incidences of crime are increasing. The solution lies in understanding the way the legal system works to make it more effective and also to think of other measures beyond law. The purpose of this online training course is to understand the concept of different forms of violence that women are facing in homes and in public spaces, the available legal remedies, how these laws are enacted, the way the laws operate, and to think about other safety measures. The course will stimulate thinking about basic questions such as how to ensure safety of women, why do we need separate laws to deal with crime against women, the Constitution of India guarantees equality, then why women are facing violence in homes and in public spaces, how and why are laws being made, what are the international law provisions to deal with violence against women, what are the criminal law provisions and if deterrence has worked to eradicate violence, what are the civil remedies available to deal with violence against women, and how such remedies help victims and survivors of violence. Can we say that violence against women is eradicated after the laws are in operation for years? If not, then why? What are the gaps that exist between the ground reality and the ways law exists on papers? What more can be done to ensure the safety of women? Can we think of remedies beyond law to ensure that women stay safe in homes and public spaces? Certainly, we cannot hold women and children responsible for their safety. Then, who is responsible to ensure the safety and well-being of women and children? So, this course will be chaired by Professor VIBHUTI Patel ji, who is a visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI. The convener for this course is Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and editorial director at IMPRI, and master trainer for the course is Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigamchi, who is an advocate, author, and researcher, gender and human rights, and a visiting senior fellow in IMPRI. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise in this course for these 4 weeks. The distinguished expert panel includes Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, Dr. K.C. Bolinini, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Nanda, Advocate Selin Thomas, Ms. Anju Dubey Pandey, Dr. Ranjana Kumari, Ms. Nandini Sarkar. I welcome you all to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for putting your time, energy, and effort into truly understanding the need related to the issues of gender equality, gender rights, and violence against women, and looking into the dimension of laws and policy in India concerning this issue, and thus helping us bring together the practitioners, scholars, and participants for impactful policy research and bringing various remedies and action. We have also shared the study material and course outline via email on the topic related to gender violence for better perusal and understanding. So, before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The question must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. Our discussion for day 1 will revolve around the theme of ensuring women's safety in a situation of increasing violence. Today, we will have special remarks by Ms. Anju Dubey Panditji, a training class by Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, who will discuss legal perspectives on violence against women, followed by the expert session by Professor VIBHUTI Patel, who will be discussing on violence against women and women's movement. Now, without any further ado, I would like to invite the chair for our course, Professor VIBHUTI Patel, to start the session with her opening remarks, following which we will start today's session. Looking forward to learning from this enlightening deliberation. Over to you, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Banvi. Respected Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Ms. Banvi, Advocate Shalu Nigam, and esteemed participants. Thank you, IMPRI team, for putting together this course, and also Dr. Shalu Nigam for curating the course so beautifully and so effectively. A 4-week immersive online certificate course on ending violence against women, and with perspective of awareness creation about laws and policies in India by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. And we have master trainer Advocate Shalu Nigam, who is an advocate, author, researcher, a multifaceted personality, and also visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. The participants will also benefit from the expertise of the veterans in the field of campaign against gender-based violence, who have worked at the level of street fighting and also contributed to the discourse on violence against women, contributed to the legal reforms over the last 40 years. Every third woman in this planet faces physical and sexual violence, mostly by the person known to her in the public and private domains. UNHRC, United Nations Human Rights Council, declared way back in 1993, that means 3 decades back, that women's rights are human rights. But what happens? These rights are robbed away from women because the increasing intensity and variety of violence against women and girls, which is a human rights violation, and the immediate and long-term physical, sexual, psychological, and mental consequences for women and girls can be dehumanizing, degrading, devastating, destabilizing, and even result in death. Violence negatively affects women's general well-being, sense of dignity, bodily integrity, self-esteem, self-confidence, and prevents women from fully participating in society. It impacts the families, their community, and the country at large. It has tremendous cost, from the greatest strains on healthcare to legal expenses and losses in the productivity of the economy. India is one of those 155 countries that have passed laws on sexual violence, domestic violence, child sexual abuse, forced child labor, trafficking of women. And India is also one of the 140 countries that have passed legislation on sexual harassment at workplace. But challenges remain in awareness about the laws, dissemination of the information about the structures and mechanisms to combat and to address gender-based violence, implementation of these laws and the way legal system operates, the biases in the legal system, limiting women and girls' access to safety and justice, and also which results in perpetrators of violence go unpunished, and then they commit more violence against women and children. Hence, it is important to enhance capacity of citizens to understand intricacies of legal provisions and use the legal system to effectively combat violence against women. With this perspective, the course is curated, and I congratulate Advocate Shalu Nigam for putting together this course in a very effective way. Over to the IMPRI team.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I would like to invite Ms. Anju Dubey Pandey for a special remark. Ms. Pandey is formerly a specialist in ending violence against women and team lead gender responsive governance at UN Women India. Ms. Anju Pandey won't be able to join us live today owing to a family emergency. However, she has shared a short video for all of us in the morning, which we are going to play.
Bhanvi, go ahead. Bhanvi, go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Voice is not coming, Bhanvi. You can try Windows Media Player.
Good evening. My name is Anju, and it is such a pleasure for me to be here with everybody today at the start of the 4-week online certificate training course on ending violence against women, awareness of laws and policies in India. I do want to take the opportunity to start my special remarks by recognizing IMPRI and congratulating the entire team for designing and organizing such an important course that's incredibly required in the times that we are speaking today. I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate my friend, philosopher, guide, mentor, Professor VIBHUTI Patel, and of course with her today, the expert is Dr. Shalu Nigam. I'm proposing to divide my special remarks into kind of 3 sections. I thought since we're focusing on increasing violence against women on day 1, it would be really pertinent to reflect a little bit on the current health crisis that we're all emerging from and the kind of impact that it has had in a sharp increase in violence against women and girls. Of course, after that, I thought it would be important for me to focus at least on 5 issues that I think are important and that you can sort of keep in mind while you go through your own learning of the 4-week course. And of course, some of the concluding remarks and recommendations, specifically in the context of violence against women, laws and policies in India. Thank you so much for sort of your time to listen to me. I'm awfully sorry that I could not join online in real time, but because of certain personal exigencies, I'm sending this recording your way. The first thing, of course, we've all known, like I said, and there is so much that has already been said, written, talked about, discussed in the context of COVID-19. We do know that there was a sharp increase in women's experiences of violence over the last 2.5 years. And this was global, it was national, it was local. We particularly saw an increase in women's experiences of domestic violence, specifically intimate partner violence, and other forms of violence as well, whether it was in public spaces or for especially the health frontline functionaries who were going out there to work. And of course, a sharp increase in online or technology facilitated or technology assisted violence. We've all read that data, we've gone through those numbers, we've seen from 30% to as high as 200% increase in women's experiences of violence because of the burden of disease, because of the economic stress. People were locked down in their homes, very constrained spaces for a number of days. One of the interesting data that I had read then was that I think close to 81-point-some%, a little over 81% of India lives in 1 or 2 rooms. And at that point of time, when traditional support systems, including essential services for survivors and victims of violence, were almost non-existent, we can imagine what happened to the quality of all of those women, survivors and victims of violence. Incredibly though, in spite of these very difficult times, we also saw amazing examples of resilience and people coming together, whether it's individuals, organizations, women's groups, women's movement. We saw a lot of support, innovative ways, including through technology-enabled solutions that came up during this time. What I'm actually hoping is, to, like I said, talk at least about 4 or 5 issues in addition to what we have seen emerge over the last, particularly the last 2.5, 3 years. The first thing that comes to my mind, and I just do want to qualify by saying, I'm not going to go into the definitional issues. I'm not currently going to, in my special address, go into the details because the course will give you that opportunity and do have a set of incredible luminous experts who you will be interacting with. So the 5 that I want to focus on, of course, in the context of violence against women, and then laws and policies, if those are the 2 buckets that we're looking at, is number 1, that any form of violence against women, whether, like I said, it's in our private spaces, whether it's in the public domain, it's at the work site, and we do know that definitions of work in workplaces changed a lot during COVID times, or it is online, is a violation of their human rights. It is deeply entrenched in gender inequality and inequality of power. I think that's the first point that is really important for us to understand. It's also critical to understand, therefore, that the root causes of violence are also embedded in this gender inequality. Whether we are looking at the forms, the nature, the type, the sites, the frequency of violence. When you're reading about the laws and policies, please understand that these are all emanating and, like I said, deeply entrenched in systemic and structural issues of gender inequality, which means that violence against women is both a cause and consequence of gender inequality. Therefore, do not look at or build or deepen your understanding of either violence or laws and policies that are associated with it in a vacuum. They exist in a deeply patriarchal, in a deeply discriminatory system, and therefore, important to build that comprehensive understanding. I think, particularly because, in the recent times, we have seen a sharp increase also in the different kinds of violence, like I said, we're seeing newer forms of violence, whether it is doxing or it is cyber stalking, or we're looking at revenge porn or hate speech, cyber bullying. So whether the site is online or offline, that space is gendered. So, that's really important to understand that. I think the third issue, which is kind of related to this, therefore, is that we really need to have a whole of sector approach, if I may say that, which means that we're not only looking at women, and particularly because, this 4-week course, we're going to be focusing on violence against women. Of course, at some point of time, I hope to also draw your attention to who defines who's a woman, and therefore, how it's critical for us to start going beyond the binaries and look at the multiplicity and the intersectionality of being a woman. But coming back to my point that, we need to have this whole of sector approach, one that is empowering, where we're looking at women not just being as beneficiaries of these laws and policies that are focusing on ending violence, but actually being very active shapers, deciders, so to say, of stuff that has to do with their lives. Which means that we necessarily have to look at how do you strengthen their voice, choice, and agency when you're talking about violence against women and laws and policies. So who's drafting, where are women? Just to pick an example, and I'm sure all of you would have read, I was just reading some latest data, and if I for a moment focus, just on the legal system or, where they're looking at the representation of women in those spaces. As we speak today, and I surely, please do double check on the data because I'm just, remembering and quoting this from hurriedly reading through some of that I think as of date, we're only looking at about 6% women in the Supreme Court and a little over 11% in the high courts. And if you look at overall women lawyers in the country, then we're looking at about 50-point-some%. So interesting to look at those numbers where we're saying that 1 in 3 women globally experience intimate partner violence. If I just pick that example, the numbers in India are similar to that. If you look at the latest NFHS 5 data, you will find it's a little over 32%, almost 1 in 3, for us as well here in India. And then you look at our representation in those spaces which are accountable for giving us that justice. So the whole point is that not only are we looking at women and girls as victims and survivors, but also women and girls as equal citizens of the country that have a role to play in defining their own destiny, like I said, as equal citizens. The number 4 point that comes to my mind here, of course, is that, like I said, that laws are gendered. So, they get formulated, they get defined, provisions get formulated, structures get made, systems are put in place in an ecosystem, in a space which is deeply unequal. And therefore, it's important to understand that sometimes the provision of the law itself may not be what it seems, So also that behaviors need to be recognized as a violation of rights if we want to look at least a redressal or some solution in form of justice. So a good example of that comes to my mind is eve teasing. For a really long time, behaviors of stalking, voyeurism, everyday normalized sexist behaviors were seen as, very normal behaviors. We did see the changes after the Nirbhaya case and, when we had the amendments that were made effective. And then you had those same behaviors being recognized, being defined, being acknowledged as stalking, for example, or voyeurism, and those then, finding place as provisions in our laws, whether we're talking about criminal laws or civil laws. Therefore, during the course, I would think it's important to look at all of this, not purely from a legal perspective, but very clearly to also look at the political economy of it, but also the socio-cultural side of what's going on with our laws and policies, specifically relating to violence against women and girls. Number 5, of course, specifically in the context of laws and policies on ending all forms of violence against women, one of the other issues that I think is really pertinent is most often the large part of it we see is focused on the response, or at least gets defined as part of the response and not so much as prevention, which means that we're reaching out to that woman once she has experienced the violence and not before she actually experiences it. And specifically in the context of laws, I see that anything that has to do with, access to that legal system, structure, pathways, whatever word we want to use, most often gets slotted into that category. Most of the policies as well, I see, look at prevention in a very limited manner, where it most often is, let's look at doing a campaign on behavioral change. So I think that part is really critical to understand, to unpack, to understand, to sort of build knowledge around that. How are laws going to play a preventative role? How are policies going to focus a lot more on prevention so we could stop it from happening in the first place? Like I say that, we can either keep on mopping the floor or close the tap. And prevention laws and policies is the bucket that we really want to focus on. Now, the big question is, how do we do this? A couple of things that come to my mind, and I think are really critical, is we definitely, in the context of laws and policies and violence against women per se, we need a lot more evidence. We need so much more evidence in understanding, in unpacking, like I said, a lot of what exists, but we do not have sort of research to back what we are saying. The second is investing in building and sustaining capacities of everyone who is accountable, the implementers and anyone who has to do with access to justice. The third, of course, is monitoring the implementation of those policies and the laws, because most often they get made and then we don't know what's going on with it. I think another important area is where we have to look at the resourcing and funding of this implementation. And like I said, you do have VIBHUTI as the expert, and I really do hope that there will be conversations around gender budgeting in the context of ending violence against women and laws and policies. So literally, how do we change from that allocating the funds to really looking at what will be the outcomes in terms of a violence-free life for women in India? I think another important issue that comes to my mind is also the harmonization, because you may have different pieces of legislation, you may have a number of sort of disparate policies, but then important to weave them together, look at that they're harmonized, and last but not the least, strengthening the data systems, including, like I said, recognizing and counting. Because if you don't count, then the loop on that getting included into the policy is lost. So really, to better understand what's going on with our data systems around violence against women, specifically in the context of laws and policies, is really critical. I think, for all of you who've opted for this course, it's the best choice you've made. You're in the hands of experts, who come with, it's just such an amazing mix of experience out there. And I wish you the best. And I really do hope that at the end of the 4 weeks, we will have a cohort of champions of feminist jurisprudence. I will stop at this point and wishing you all the best for your course. Thanks a lot again to IMPRI for giving me this opportunity to address you all and to listen to me. Thank you so much again. Good evening.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an enriching session and for taking out your precious time and sharing the video despite your family emergency. We are indeed very grateful. Now, we would move to our next session by Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam. She is an advocate, author, researcher, gender and human rights and visiting senior fellow at IMPRI for a training session. Ma'am will discuss on the topic of legal perspectives on violence against women.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would really, I'd like to thank Professor VIBHUTI Patel and Ms. Anju Pandey for her wonderful remarks and to set the tone right for this program. And, it's such a wonderful beginning. And but I also like to thank Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, and the entire IMPRI team for putting so much of hard work and much effort in organizing this event. And I would also like to thank speakers and panelists who will be coming later also, like Dr. Ranjana Kumari, Mrs. Nandini Sarkar, Professor Nanda, Dr. Albertina, and Advocate Salim Thomas and Kirti ma'am. And most importantly, to all the participants who have taken out their valuable time to make sure that we all at least start a discussion around ending violence against women. And I will also like to say that before having this program overview, that violence against women is a very large, complex, and multidimensional issue, and it cannot be, entire thing cannot be covered in 4 days or 4 months. I think a lot of things are happening and a lot of things are, being written and discussed and debated that we need to, keep on working on it. So that is why I think there is some problem.
No, ma'am.
Only question. There is a question. So
No, it's a poll. No problem, ma'am. You can go ahead. You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I want to share my
Please
screen.
go ahead. Please go ahead. We have shared a poll. Participants can get in so that we can get a sense of what are the perceptions of the participants.
Okay.
And please go ahead with sharing the screen. No issues.
How to share my screen? I'm not getting that link.
Yeah, ma'am, you can go to bottom middle, share screen, the yellow button.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We are able to see it. Ma'am, you can go. Perfect. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the program overview is that today we are talking about understanding violence against women. On day 2, we'll be talking about violence against women and legal safeguards. And on day 3, we'll be talking about safety in public spaces. And on day 4, we'll be talking about safety in homes. So, but I would like to, share with the participants that if you have any suggestions, experiences, either your personal or, while working with victims and survivors of violence, you may be having a lot of experiences. So, we can share those things. You have posters, poems, slogans, stories, whatever comments and queries. The idea is just to continue with the discussion and debate about violence against women. So starting with day one, the focus of today's presentation will be on violence against women. And it's in very broad and general terms. We'll be talking about the numbers, the consequences, how we can end violence against women, the role of various stakeholders, and the role of individuals. So I'll maybe start with this, a short, maybe, this.
Okay.
Just 2 minutes, 42 seconds kind of a video.
No problem. Go ahead, ma'am.
It's visible?
No. You can stop share and share again.
Okay. No, I think it's not coming.
मैम वो वीडियो लिंक आएगा तो उस पे आप शेयर कर दें.
Sharing screen तो दिखा रहा है, but where is the video thing?
Ma'am, you can click on the video link and then it will pop up a new window with the video.
Sorry, I couldn't. I have to locate it.
मैम आप चैट में वो वीडियो लिंक मुझे भेज दीजिए प्लीज.
Okay. I think ये chat में अभी सबके साथ share हो गया है.
I have got it. Yes.
Okay. इसका sound अभी शायद नहीं आ रहा है.
आ रहा है?
हाँ, अभी ठीक है. This video is by UN Women Asia Pacific. ये वॉइस फिर से गया क्या? सर इसका वॉइस
अरे पच्चीस दिन यहाँ खाना पीना बिना खाए के भूख गया है एक बात के कोनी कोनी समझा लगी तो के चल चल तो के बताओ काम तो खुला है ना भरी है तो एक बात के खाली खाली बुझाओ लगे तो
Yes, so can I share my screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe we can have discussion about this video at the end of this session. So I'll start with a definition of violence against women. The United Nations defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, and it includes such acts as threats, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private spaces. The violence may take place in public space or in family, or it could be perpetrated by the state. So violence against women is not a men versus women issues, but it is importantly about challenging patriarchy. It is about gender stereotypes, misogyny, and sexism. It is rooted in gender inequality. It is about structural discrimination against women, and violence is about abuse of power and harmful norms. So gender-based power differentials place women and girls at the risk for multiple forms of violence. If we talk about in India, it's a biggest war against women because we have systemic patriarchy and structural discrimination, which are so deeply embedded and which cause violence or threat or fear of violence. So as even earlier ma'am has said that violence against women has to be linked with different parameters of inequalities and hierarchies. So even, we have patriarchy, which is linked, which can also be linked to caste, class, religion, and poverty and other factors. And it's called intersectionality. The term intersectionality is coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. She began her theory with an exploration of the oppression of Black women, but the analysis has expanded to include many more aspects of social identity. So intersectionality identifies multiple factors of advantages and disadvantages which are interlinked, and examples of these factors include gender, caste, race, religion, class, disability, and so on. So in India, some scholars have expanded this idea to see how poor or Dalit women are oppressed because they are poor, because they are Dalit, and also because they are women. So, intersectionality is kind of linking, formulating the social identity depending on where this person is located within the larger social context. Then the scholars have also talked about patriarchies in India. Some of the scholars have said that we have multiple patriarchies. Like patriarchies are defined as a system which consider men as superior being who controls resources, decision, and ideology. And if you see the video by Kamala Basin ma'am, she has explained very nicely what is patriarchies. So earlier, there were traditional patriarchies linked to religion and culture, or Brahminical patriarchy. But with the advent of modernism and capitalism, we have capitalist patriarchy, which is commodifying and objectifying women. And it is leading to problems such as pornography, trafficking, body shaming, pushing use of cosmetics and other forms of violence, where even markets and businesses are involved. And then we have patriarchal state consisting of men who are promoting patriarchal ideology. So the kind of violence, we have different forms of violence in India. So women's bodies are being targeted in times of wars, riots, communal violence, and conflict. And often women's bodies have been used as a site of punishing the enemies that we have seen during the partition and even later on during the riots and different forms of violence which have been taking place in terms of communal riots and other things. Then coming to violence by state. I can tell you one interesting case which came to India and how women have resisted against this violence. If you know this case from Manorma from Manipur, she died on 15 July 2004. She was shot several times and her bullet-ridden body was found dead, abandoned 3 kilometers away from her home where she was arrested the night before. Now, the failure to assign culpability in the alleged rape and murder led to widespread protest. And 5 days after the killing, around 30 women walked naked through Imphal to Assam Rifle headquarters, shouting, "Indian Army rape us too. We all are Manorma's mother." Now, similar case of violence have also been reported from various other parts of India where people have resisted and protested against draconian laws such as Armed Force Special Power Act. And we know about Iron Sharmila, Soni Suri, and other women who have been in their own context. They are protesting against violence by the state in various ways. When we're talking about resistance, there is another interesting, the incidents which took place on August 13, 2004, where 200 women lynched one of the rapists, extortionists, and accused of several murders. This man was, his name was Akku Yadav, and he was indulged for a decade into criminal activities. And there was a bail hearing scheduled that day for Yadav in the Nagpur District Court. And the word spread around through adjoining neighborhood that he would be released. So hundreds of women marched from the slum to the court carrying vegetable knives and chili powders. And when Akku Yadav appeared, he saw a woman whom he has raped earlier, and he shouted that I would rape you again. And this woman started hitting him with her sandal. And then the woman also joined in, and Yadav was stabbed over 70 times, and chili powders and stones were thrown in his face. And this occurred in the Nagpur District Court on the floor of the courtroom. The woman claimed that he has been raping and abusing local women with impunity over decades because the local police has refused to help the victims, and Yadav was bribing the police. So I'm not going into the debate of whether it was right or wrong, but this is the way, the woman could find solution to their problem. But apart from the state violence, we have seen brutal violence even during the normal times. If you see, for the past few months, we have stories appearing in the media about the violence in homes, the violence on roads where the girl is being dragged. And it is rising. And within the families and societies, again, we have different forms of violence which are taking place. It includes domestic violence, sexual violence, forced and early marriages, femicide, trafficking. And we have seen, the number of women who are like missing women, which Amrita Sen has called. And women are being, there are the cases of infanticide and feticide. Then there are cases of child marriage. Then there are cases where girls are being denied their right to education, right to property, right to health. And this all is happening within the context called home, which is supposed to provide safety and, comfort. So violence in natal families and in communities take place because of property or for pretentious honor, or and at the same time the resistance is also emerging. So we have violence, we have resistance. So and this violence is taking place different kinds of forms. If we talk about in communities, we have witch hunting, we have honor killing, so all kinds of violence which is taking place. So violence has many faces, as we've seen. We have sexism and gender stereotypes, direct physical, psychological, and other forms of violence, discriminatory laws and policies, lack of political participation, denial of health services, and denial of education and employment opportunities. We have unpaid care works. So it's a very vast kind of a thing. And what is happening is that over the period, like we are seeing the newer forms of violence, which are more serious and It's increasing in magnitude and scope. So the data shows that even during the pandemic, the domestic violence has increased up to 3%, and it is called a shadow pandemic by the United Nations. So the United Nations has identified two major forms of violence, domestic violence and sexual violence. Now, domestic violence refers to behavior by an intimate partner or ex-partner that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm, including aggression, coercion, psychological abuse, and controlling behaviors. Sexual violence is defined as an act where a person, it's directed against a person sexuality using coercion by any person, regardless of the relationship to the victim, and it could be in any setting. And it also includes rape and unwanted sexual touching and other non-contact forms. For many women, as we have seen this in this video also, that sexual harassment is a daily experience, whether it is online, on the street, or in the workplace. And common forms of harassment are like, bullying, catcalling, sexual comments, jokes serve to make women feel unwelcome and unsafe. And they reinforce biases and stereotypes that perpetuate misogyny, contributed to culture of impunity. And online and digital violence, as ma'am has also said earlier, we have the cyberbullying, doxing, trolling, hate comments, where, on internet, social media, computer games, all against women because she's a woman. So it is recognized as most pervasive human rights violation. It is happening in all countries, in a situation of conflicts or crisis, and also in peaceful times, in all public and private spaces. So the research shows that 35% of women have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Globally, 47% of women are murdered, and these murders are committed by their intimate partner or a family member. And if you talk about murders of men, it is less than 6%. Then women represent 55% of victims of forced labor and 98% victims of sexual exploitation. The United Nations, the WHO, the data says that 1 in 3 women and girls experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, frequently by the intimate partner, and 71% of human trafficking victims worldwide are women and girls, and of 3 out of 4 of these women and girls are sexually exploited. Another survey which says that, by UN Women, it says that 44% women reported facing sexual harassment, 36% women reported facing physical abuse, and 50% women reported facing verbal abuse. Then we have also seen that 650 million of women who are, they get married before they achieve the age of 18 years. During the COVID pandemic, the studies shows that 7 in 10 women think that domestic violence has increased since the pandemic. 1 in 2 women reported that either they themselves or they know somebody who has experienced violence. 1 in 4 women feel more unsafe at home since COVID. Only 1 in 10 women could seek help from police if they've experienced violence, and the trafficking has increased multiple times. If we talk about violence in the context of India, now if we see the census 2011 figure, we have 940 females per 1,000 males. And if we see the National Family Health Survey data, that is 2019 to 2021. Now, this data says that in 23 states and union territories, sex ratio was more than 1,000, but in 6 states, including Delhi and Punjab, sex ratio was less than 950. So women lag behind in literacy rates. The number of schooling is less. Then women are facing different kinds of health problems such as anemia and other forms of problems which have been found. The increase in gender-related violence has been found by this National Family Health Survey data also. And in some states, it has jumped quite a lot. So in Haryana and in Delhi and other states, you will see that, and in Karnataka, it has jumped from 21% to 44%. So all women, they are working, but few get salaries. So the National Health Family Survey data show that only 25.4% of women age in the age group of 15 to 49 years who have worked in the last 12 years were only, they were paid in cash. Then in terms of autonomy, only 88.7% of women, participate in household decision making, 43.3% own property, this data goes on. And problem is that some of the women who agree that wife beating is justified under some circumstances. So if you see the data state-wise distribution, we have seen that in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and other states, it's more than 75% women who says that it's justified to a man can beat a woman under some circumstances. And similarly, in the situation of men who have justified wife beating, again, the state-wise data show that in some states we have, a large number of respondents who have said that wife beating is justified. So more women than men are justifying wife beating. And they say it's okay for a man to beat his wife if she didn't cook properly. So this number has gone down from the previous 5 years, 5 years ago when in 2016, this NHFS was conducted. At that moment of time, we had 52% women and 42% men who justify wife beating. So again, violence is rooted in patriarchy. There is high acceptance for gender-based violence because women are considered as subordinate gender in our society. There are fixed social notions about how a woman should behave, that she should be subordinate to a man, she should serve him, and she must earn less than him, and so on. So if a woman challenges it, then it is considered as a right of the husband to show her place. Now, coming to sexual violence, the data, the National Family Health Survey shows that the cases of rapes, marital rape are on increase, and women have reported being raped by their husbands, by their former husbands, by relatives, employers, and including strangers. And the problem is that marital rape is not recognized as a crime in India, though the petition is pending before the Supreme Court. But a few months back, we have a judgment from Delhi High Court, a division bench, where the one judge says that it should be a crime, another says that it shouldn't be a crime. So again, the opinion is divided. So we're just hoping that the Supreme Court should give a favorable judgment, but then so that the data, the National Crime Record Bureau, it says that how the crime against women is increasing, crime against children, crime against elderly, cyber crimes, everything, all kind of crimes are increasing over the years. If we talk about specifically about crime against women in 6 years, it rose to around 26.35% in past 6 years. The data also shows that there is a drop in 2020 in rape cases, but it increased again in 2021. The thing is that the conviction rate is about the number of cases filed by the police and the number of the reports being turned into conviction of the accused. So that rate is very low, and we have seen that in Hathras case, the accused were let out, and on August 15, 2022, when Prime Minister called for Nari Shakti while celebrating the 75th Independence Day, the same day the Bilkis Banu's case, the accused walked out, and the government allowed the release. under its remission policy. When we come to dowry deaths, again, one woman every 77 minutes is murdered for dowry. The data says that the number of cases are increasing under Dowry Prohibition Act. The dowry deaths, though the number are declining, but then the suicide rate among women is increasing. And as many as 45,000 women committed suicide in India in 2021, or nearly 1 in every 9 minutes, which is a serious concern. Now, coming to the cruelty by husband or his relatives, that is section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. Again, one case is being reported every 4 minutes. And these are NCRB data because, so this is the over 5 years, the crime against women and children are increasing. The women are being raped, they are murdered after rape. There is the cases of gang rapes. The women are tortured for dowry, murder for not getting dowry. The cases of abduction and all kind of crimes are increasing. And we have a lot of cases of underreporting. One of the studies says that in cases of sexual violence, the percentage of women who are reporting rape to the police is, less than 0.01%. So what are the consequences of violence? Now, violence has short-term and long-term physical, economic, and psychological consequences. They prevent women's full and equal participation in society. Violence has serious impact on children and families. It involves direct and indirect cost for survivors, employers, and the public sector in terms of health, police, legal, and related expenditure, as well as loss of wages and productivity of a woman. Violence is also reported to, it's leading to injuries. 42% of women who experience domestic violence, they say that they have been injured. It led to unintended pregnancies, induced abortion, sexually transmitted disease, including HIV, increase the likelihood of miscarriage, stillbirth, preterm delivery, and low birth weight babies. Violence is also leading to depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety disorders, sleep difficulties, eating disorders, and in some cases also suicide attempts have been made by women. In terms of social and economic cost of violence, women may suffer isolation, inability to work, loss of wages, lack of participation in regular activities, and limited ability to take care of themselves and their children. One of the study estimate that the global economy loses $1.5 trillion every year due to consequences of violence against women. And this losses include ranging money spent in hospitals or on law enforcement, or the income which victim lost because she misses work. So research indicate that the cost of violence against women could amount to 2% of GDP. Like, different studies are reporting different kinds of the numbers, but the thing is that it is like the huge cost is being incurred because of violence. Some study says that it is, it entails much more higher cost than homicides or civil wars. In India, one of the studies says that a woman can lose an average of at least 5 paid work days for each incident of domestic violence. If we talk about USA, it is calculated as $5.8 billion. The cost alone for domestic violence. In Canada, it is about $1.16 billion. In Australia, the violence costs $11.38 billion per year. And in England and Wales, it is estimated $32.9 billion. Another study which says that the violence is estimated to the loss of $4.4 trillion or 5.2% of global GDP. So the only way that we can bring increase productivity and bring the cost down is to end violence against women. So what can the governments do to end violence? Now, various research studies, including the UN and the other scholars who have conducted studies, they say that, okay, you implement the international laws and constitutional provisions. Government must provide free support for the victims and survivors of violence. They should allocate adequate funding for support services, and comprehensive training and gender sensitization should be provided to all the service providers. Continuous training programs should be made available besides legal literacy and awareness campaigns, making effective laws and policies to eradicate violence, ensuring the efficient enforcement of laws and policies. Then again, providing services such as shelter homes, and again, the quality services in terms of shelter home, medical and health facilities, legal support, and other services. Again, I would, it's collecting data, as ma'am has also said, that data is a key. Then we have to challenge gender inequality, hold the abusers accountable, countering harmful norms, including programs to eliminate gender stereotypes, and efforts to make structural changes to end discrimination, to abolish all forms of inequalities. So we have to understand that a woman cannot get out of a situation of violence if she doesn't have money, a safe house, and she feels that her children are safe. So women should not be forced to choose between an abusive situation or destitution. But what are the main barriers to end violence against women? Now, these are orthodox and restrictive environment in the country, lack of budgetary provisions for support services, gender-biased education system, socialization and conditioning of children, non-sensitive attitude of service providers and law enforcement institutions, lack of economic opportunities for women, sexism, and culture of impunity. So how can we end violence against women? If the state is not, doing its job, then can we really do something? Yeah, we can. The research says that we can talk about large-scale reductions, as well as we can take small steps. We can talk about protective and preventive measures. We have to ensure quality services to the victims and survivors of violence, and we need to take all violence and abuse seriously. At micro level, what action we can take? We can speak up and speak out. Do not remain silent about violence. Empathetic listening to survivors of violence. Amplify their voices and stories. Create space for dialogue, both in person and online. Do not judge a victim or a survivor. Know the issues and sign. We can start from ourselves and from our homes. Family is considered to be one of the core institutions that can promote gender equity and equality. And starting from young age, a child can be, socialized in various ways. Parenting and socialization can have a huge impact on values and perspective of the next generation. It is important to understand the pervasive influence of patriarchy, and then we have to analyze and introspect our own behavior. And instead of just raising the issue of violence, we can take a stand every time we see it. In terms of large-scale reduction, like the research have suggested that, we can talk about feminist activism and advocacy, coordination across legal, health, finance, and other sectors, fixing responsibility and accountability of every stakeholder, better laws and better enforcement of laws, in terms of accessibility and quality of services, eliminating stereotypes, altering the culture of violence with impunity. Other suggestions are being given are women empowerment, better health, education, and employment, championing women's economic empowerment, changing gender norms, affirming gender equality, countering negative stereotypes, smashing patriarchy, misogyny, and sexism, investing resources, increasing fund to end violence against women, include women and girls in decision making, and some of the organizations are also engaging with men in fight to end violence. So we have to push for stronger and effective laws, and we have to help raise awareness about the gaps in the law, because some of the studies they have shown that even if the law is very good on papers, in implementation, there are a lot of problems. So we have to really raise awareness and raise our voice that, these kind of gaps should not be there. To demand fixing the accountability of the abusers. And we have seen in India that, the Constitution has helped the marginalized and the women to demand their rights, and, women's movement have, we have used Constitution, and we have said that, okay, the Constitution should be implemented. In the Nervia protest in December 2012, we have raised several slogans such as Bekhof, Azadi, and among many others. But later, somehow the things are, in Nervia protest, people they came out on the street. But now we have to really ensure that, again, in case of violence, what we have to do, we have to think about that. Then creating safe and empowering, spaces, safe cities, and safe public spaces. A gendered approach to urban town planning, investment in safety and viability of public spaces, and this include investment in safe potable water, sanitation, lighting, and provisions for training on financial and legal literacy, calling for better responses and services. In terms of homes, safe and empowering homes need to be created. So we have to talk about creating spaces for democratic families, ending discrimination in homes, preventing violence, creating support services, network and infrastructure, and we have to invest more in research and action plan to change norms, which are fostering the environment of violence. The United Nations UN Women, they have talked about prevention strategies, and in terms of 3 aspects, like violence can be prevented before it occurs, preventing recurrence or escalations once it has occurred, and preventing long-term harms to the survivors. So some of the strategies they suggested is community mobilization, parenting program to prevent child abuse and neglect, awareness generation among both men and women, and the bystander intervention. And this bystander intervention is also called community of responsibility approach, where people in the community play an active role in creating a safe and respectful environment by shifting the community norms and behavior expectations. Because again, if we talk about domestic violence, it is like people don't intervene. They say that it's, the private issue between a man and a woman. So, that is why we have to change that kind of norms and behaviors. Then conducting safety audits. So some of the strategic interventions which have been suggested by United Nations is, legislative policy, organizational and institutional reforms, mobilizing and engaging communities and organization, engaging with the media to support these efforts to prevent violence against women, social marketing campaigns, and the kind of video we have seen, these kind of if we invest resources, we can help to raise awareness and to promote the norms regarding equality. Then economic, social, and political empowerment of women, skill development, mitigating the consequences of prior exposure to violence, and addressing other types of violence that can contribute to preventing violence against women. So it's about how to reduce the hate speech, the kind of things which are happening around in today's context. So again, another suggestion which is given is that call for a better response in services. We need to have quality, accessible shelter, homes, hotlines, counseling services, and other support services. We can call on the governments to bridge the funding gaps, because funding is the major issue that is preventing many of the programs which are being made to be enforced at the ground level. Ensuring essential services for the survivors, and especially during the crisis and conflict, and increasing women's representation in decision making. Another things which has been suggested is challenging beliefs on masculinity. Now, toxic masculinity is driving violence against women. Their traditional concept of masculinity, that the traits such as aggression, strength and control, those kind of norms, they consider sensitivity and empathy as as a feminine. So we have to challenge these beliefs. We have to reflect on ideas about masculinity and femininity, think critically about the depiction of gender in media and culture, and engaging with men. Now, UN Women has again talked about 7 intervention strategies. They call it respect, where respect, every alphabet has a kind of special connotation. So relationships, skill strengthening, empowerment of women, services ensured, poverty reduced, environment made safe, child and adolescent abuse prevented, transformed attitude, beliefs, and norms. So in India, if we talk about some of the organizations, they have come out with some of the creative ideas, to challenge the stereotypical norms which we have. So we can think in terms of having this kind of creative things. One of the slogan which is being raised by the women's movement is that personal is political. And it's not abroad, even in India, women's movement has talked about this idea of personal is political. Now, violence against women occurs because the conditions are being enabled to facilitate it. And when the system, the state and society excuses it. So we have to change all of this to achieve the goal of zero tolerance to violence. Now, coming back to the message in the documentary, which we have seen, it talks about drawing the line. So again, we need to continue with the dialogue, and discussion around this issue. And I think I'll stop here, and we will continue to share more. So back to the IMPRI team.
Hello. Hello, Manvi. Are you there? I think there are questions in the question box.
Ma'am, you can.
Shalu Nigam. Yeah, if you can answer them, there are 5 questions.
Ma'am, we can give some
yes,
to
yes,
Shalu, ma'am. Ma'am, Vibhuti, ma'am, if you have any comments, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think both the previous presentations by Madam Anju Dubey Pandey and Dr. Shalu Nigam have comprehensively taken care of all the aspects of reasons of causes of violence, consequences of violence. They have provided the overarching analytical framework of how patriarchy determines the unequal power relationships and the structures and systems which are also so misogynist and androgynous. They create this kind of a reality. And when the the crisis, both, as she said, that capitalist patriarchy, which also creates so much of human miseries, both on men and women, that in the final analysis, those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, they suffer the most. And they also dwelled on the preventive measures and the long-term measures that we have, that whatever legal provisions we have over last 40 years, we got series of legal reforms, and none of these legal reforms came as a charity, act of charity or act of social work from the system. Women's movement had to collectively fight. A lot of street fighting took place right from the time of Mathura rape case way back in 1972, that we got them, but still to make it a substantive reality, make these laws very substantive and transformative is a major challenge that we are facing. So I think they have set the tone for this whole course, and I comment that. Yeah.
Thanks, ma'am. Now we would like to take the question and answer from the participants.
There are already 6 questions in the question box.
Okay, so I will read them out.
Yeah, one after. Okay. What would you prefer, Dr. Shalu? All 6 you would take at a one go, or they should read one after another?
Ma'am, we can also invite our participants to speak.
Yeah, they are there. One is Jaivantika Datta, first one.
Yes, and also Ayushi ji, you are connected. If you can unmute and speak. Yes, Ayushi, please go ahead.
I just wanted to know if there are any models or any such interventions that you have come across which have worked on prevention very well till now, either international community or in India, which are only working on prevention. If you can shed some light on it.
Yeah, there are several efforts by different organizations, even at the international level and as well as the national level. There are organizations which are working at the level of preventions, and the creative strategies. They have come up with posters. There's some campaigns such as Bell Bajao, if you remember.
Yes.
A few months, like a few years back, there was this campaign. So there are different kind of strategies.
White ribbon.
There's some voice. Yeah, so we have different kinds of creative steps being taken by women's organizations, by international organizations, and even the local organizations. So yeah, right now I have not covered them, but slowly during the course of this program, we will talk about all of them.
Right. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other question?
Yeah, there are 7 questions. Second one is, yeah.
I just have a suggestion. Did you?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Rashmi.
Rashmi ji, please go ahead. Dr. Rashmi ji, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. My suggestion is that, see, I'm a professor working in grassroots. So I had some other expectations from this workshop because, we are engaging so much of time. We would like some, very concrete solutions or what other institutions are doing. Because this introductory session is there, but the thing is that there is a lot of data about already available online. So why should we devote whole session for that? So I'm expecting some brainstorming sessions from now onwards. Hope my hopes would get fulfilled.
Very nice question. Thank you. We will try to incorporate and stimulate the session with such suggestion. Very nice. Shalu ma'am or Vibhuti ma'am, would you like to take that? We have more questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole course is where all the resource persons are actually working in terms of intervention, in terms of supporting one-stop crisis center, counseling of survivor of violence, amplifying their voice, working with the criminal justice system, and also so many of them whose lives have transformed, and they have also joined the process of support to survivors of violence. So I think those experiences are quite empowering. And I think even in my presentation, I have taken care of the voices of the women's movement and what kind of mobilizations that have taken place at a grassroots level to address this issue, and which has resulted in women getting out of the violent situation, rebuilding their shattered life, and taking a collective solution to the problem. Yeah, very important. It is important because media gives us profile of what is happening in terms of violence, but what are the resistances and what are the collective responses at a grassroots level? They are very important. In fact, economists are also addressing the issue of how to address this issue through allocation of funds, functionaries, sensitization of our local self-government bodies, especially the women elected representatives of the Panchayati Raj institutions in urban and rural areas. So even in their training module, this is included. Gender-based violence is included, and also so many handbooks, directories, and the processes, step-by-step processes of addressing gender-based violence, how to approach the police, how to approach the criminal justice system, how to deal with the suicidal ideation that they have. Also the helplines that extension education departments or the social work institutions and the women's organizations have created, and how they have been more effective in dealing with the issue. Also the more crisis that we are facing in terms of Nirbhaya fund not being utilized, 1,000 crore which are allocated since 2013. Why do they remain unutilized? Only 4 or 5 states are using them. So how to sensitize the bureaucrats and governance structures? Those attempts are also being made. Yeah. Yes.
Ma'am, Shaloji, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Like this is the very like we have to formulate a base because we have different kinds of people with different kinds of backgrounds who have joined this session. So we have to come to the a kind of a same platform. So therefore we have to see that all people understand what we are talking about. And therefore immediately if I jump to some different kinds of things which are happening, so that we will cover in the next coming sessions.
Yeah.
So definitely we'll talk about the laws, the policies, the kind of action being taken by different NGOs at international, national and local level. So that will be covered during the by our panelists who are expert in their field, so they will share their experiences. So I hope that all those questions will be answered.
Yeah. So
Yes, ma'am, I totally
Dr.
agree.
Shalu, there are 11 questions.
Okay, can I answer?
Devantika Datta.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, I actually remembered this question when right during the first talk itself,
Yeah.
which is when ma'am was discussing some issue. So that's when it just occurred to me that this Europe had framed these laws to protect its
Privacy laws. So her question is that we need to discuss how India's lack of privacy laws translate into more violence towards women in the 21st century.
Ma'am, if you allow, we can take more questions. We have a lot of questions.
Then the second question.
Charuji is there. Charuji,
especially during the digital age, ma'am. And I'm sorry, please don't mute me. Especially during the digital age. And ma'am, if we could if you're interested in organizing any sort of signature campaign for the marital rape or for anything, please, this would be a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
Also, ma'am. Okay. Also, one more question: do we have an exam or anything for this course?
No, we do not have, Jantika. There is a lot of noise from your background.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jantika ji. Charuji, we can go next to you. Charuji has.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Charuji. Thank you. Please be brief. Yeah.
Though I have asked 2 questions, but I would like to change my question. I am a person whose mother has been through domestic violence all of her life, and I also have been physically assaulted by my parents. I would really like, and I have approached police and these centers, helpline centers for it. I have rebuilt my life, but they still kind of put me back in that place and stuff. I would really like to know from this workshop the laws, the actionable plans, the things I can use as a women whose friends and other family members do not believe and do not support as an individual, to kind of at least get, not even asking for justice, but at least not be brought back to all of this and cyber stalking that they do, and just something that I can do to keep on building my life rather than being pushed back to the ill-fated family that I was born in.
Very good question. Thank you, Charuji. We can just take one more question before going to our panelist. Richa ji, are you there?
Yeah.
Please.
I have been hearing about the gender-based violence across various spaces. My concern is that since there are a lot of gender-based violence that occurs in an educational spaces. So how can are we thinking of including such sort of a gender-based violence in our larger discussion, or how are we going to look forward towards it? Because whatever we have seen that gender-based violence is in the education level is somehow being overshadowed or sidelined when we talk about gender-based violence in other space, be it in family or other such spaces, family, workplace. So school and school, especially school, is an arena where a lot of gender-based violence takes place and in various forms, and we somehow miss including that into our discourse. So are we looking forward for this?
Thank you. Thank you, Richa-ji. We, of course, are. Everyone are. We have entire session on one on domestic things, one on institutional things. We'll dwell much larger into these. Thank you for raising such questions, everyone. I move to Shaloji or Vibhuti-ji to take these questions and enlighten our participants to be more deeper into such issues. Thank you so much.
Yes, Vibhuti ma'am, will you like to?
Yes.
I think the question about the violence in school, I think it has been taken up now. I think after the POCSO case, POCSO Act 2012, parent teachers associations have become sensitive, and wherever you have, like because of WDC also does, Women Development Cell also does gender sensitization, at least in colleges, these issues, so even junior colleges are discussing these issues of violence. But school education is one thing, because where only NGOs have reached out, like human rights education course was started in Mumbai, which was addressed only to schools, and not all school authorities agreed. But I think it's very important. But some very empowering incidences that we have got, for example, when a teacher asked student to write an essay on my mother. One student wrote a whole thing that my mother is very hardworking, but still every day she gets beaten up. Every night I listen to her sobs. That makes me very disturbed. Teacher, what? Because she was gender sensitized, the teacher immediately showed that essay to the principal, and they filed FIR, because you know that in Domestic Violence Act, even the moment you even witness or hear the cries of a person, as a citizen, you can file the FIR, even anonymous, if you are scared that the accused will or the tormentor will attack you, or if you are a man and if you intervene, then they say he will cast aspersion on that woman. Even anonymous call you can make on 191. So all these things, when we discuss that, it results in a very good response. In fact, during the pandemic, within 1 year, National Commission for Women received 275,000 distress calls on their helpline, okay, immediately after. And all these distress calls, they were on child line. That means all of them were below 18. Out of which 25% calls were from adolescent girls. They were in the 14 to 18 groups. And it is mainly because of the awareness which is generated at a school level. So there are some states where there is a lot of proactive efforts are made by the human rights organization, sensitive teachers, teachers union, parents in PTA, they just don't do the listening to Bollywood song and then having some nice snacks, but they are discussing real issues. So I think only after the POCSO, because POCSO also, it's not only about the child, it starts with the child sexual abuse, but then parents start becoming serious on the issues that children are facing. So I think school is a very important, and the current National Education Policy 2020 talks about gender sensitization from preschool level. That means right from the age of 3, you have to orient children. There was a time like when in the year 1982, when we approached the Commissioner of Mumbai to introduce a book called Safe Touch and Safe Touch to avoid child sexual abuse. We were told by the commissioner that our priorities were wrong. If we do such thing, if we expose our children to gender violence and issues of violence, they will lose their innocence. But actually, in reality, children have used their innocence. They see so much of violence on screen, on in personal life, the abusive words that they hear all along and everywhere. So instead of avoiding this issue or discussion on this issue, it's better to discuss and provide them scientific understanding and how not to witness or accept violence as a spectator, but inform at least the person whom you trust. So these kind of efforts are being made by the women's organizations, human rights organizations, even the community-based organizations in several states, I would say. Like UN Women has also made a film where the gender responsive budgeting is being used for addressing violence against women at every level, school and college and community and domestic area.
Thank you, ma'am. Shaloji.
Yes, in terms of like, you rightly said that it should start from school, and even within the families, we have to talk about socialization and, conditioning of children. So, different organizations are talking about, how to raise democratic families, and how to, sensitize children in case if they're witnessing violence, in case if they're, there are a lot of custody battles which are going on, which are coming to the courts. So in that situation, it is a child who face, a lot of problems. So solutions are, we have a lot of research which is being going on in that sense. But the problems we are facing, that okay, like, the dowry law, some of the states have made very good law, like the Kerala. In Kerala, they're talking about this dowry law, putting a cap on expenses of marriage, and other kind of the list of dowry to be made, the list of the gifts should not be more than 25,000, and the parent should not spend more than 1 lakh of rupees. But again, this bill is in the process. So, at some places, some of the good things are going on, but at other places, we are also facing problems where, in terms of, the domestic violence law is being, they're talking about diluting the dowry law and the domestic violence law, because the means organization, they say that these laws are being misused and abused. So we have to really see that how to, when I'm talking about the law, so how should we deal with different kind of situations. So there are some good practices, there are some challenges we have to address, all of them.
No, and in Kerala, one good thing that now every child, in every school, you have to take a pledge that I will not support dowry system, and boys have to take a pledge that I will not demand dowry, mainly to convey that it is a crime. Otherwise, everyone rationalizes and glorifies dowry as a customary practice. It is not a customary practice. It is a crime against the state. So that value that every child has to understand. After that, there are always the violators of every law, and the criminal justice system will take care of it. Yeah.
Very stimulating conversation going on. Ma'am, we will take a few more questions.
Yeah.
A lot of participants have.
Yes.
So we'll start with Dipali Atul Devkar ji. Ma'am, please be concise and brief.
Yes. Hello to sir and ma'am. This is Dipali, and I am a founder and director of NGO. And my question is that we are doing the same work, whatever we are discussing. So related to this, how we can contact to the government authority for a funding, or how can we collaborate with them to awareness programs and to give the solutions, or the things which we can do for the society.
Thank you, Dipali.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next we go to Barsha ji. Barsha Chatterjee.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
political science postgraduate from the University of Calcutta. My question is, ma'am was saying that in order to stop domestic violence, people must speak up. So there are a lot of middle class women out there who do not speak up, mainly because they want to save their family's reputation, or maybe because they have a child. So how to convince these women to speak up and not tolerate, not endure the violence inflicted upon them?
Very good question, Barsha ji. Thank you. Next we go to Vaishali Lahiri ji.
No, I don't have any specific question, but the thing is that, though Dr. Shalu Nigam's presentation was very informative, I am also looking forward to, understanding on how we may, strengthen our network of preventing violence against women. So more of good practices, success stories, and how mobilization works at ground, and how change is being initiated. Delving deep into those issues and aspects, I think would be a good learning for all of us from the course. So I don't have any specific question. This was just my suggestion to the first speaker who raised a similar issue. Thank you so much. But it was a very good learning and first class for me.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Vaishali ji, for raising this issue of impact, especially from this intellectual cohort like ours. Brinda ji, you can go next. Okay, Rohini Chandra ji.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
I'm Rohini Chandra, working as project head in Tresna Foundation and doing field work in rural villages of Nadia Taluka, while working for educating girls and females for menstrual awareness. We have understood that during those sessions that they don't take this violence as any kind of crime or unjust thing. They have accepted this as way of life. So my thinking is whatever policies are made by government for this protection, they should be really understood to those end user for their benefit, and what should be the way to do this as an NGO partner for supporting females.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohini ji. Brinda ji, you are unmuted. Please go on.
Yeah,
Dr.
yes. Good evening, ma'am and sir.
Good evening.
Yeah. I'm an assistant professor and working as a woman empowerment cell coordinator, ma'am, for the past 15 years. So I have facing a lot of issues towards a small child, girl child and woman in all areas, rural and urban, everything. And as per my data, statistical data, which I have observed, that is every second, 3 women or girl, they are undergoing any type of issues, whether it may be a rape or death or dowry, like that. We are all doing such type of webinars, programs, everything. But where is actual implementation? We have to go through them. Compulsory, we have to door-to-door campaigns must be required, and we have to make the woman at one place, and we have to start a revolution, I think. So it is how far, whether we have succeeded or not, I cannot say exactly, but it is exact moment which we have to give awareness to each and every individual throughout the country.
Right.
Indeed,
What we have tried is, sorry.
No, in all cases, ma'am, not only that, especially cyber crime. Yeah, cyber crime also, many of the women have been harassing in such a way, though they are highly educated also, especially higher officials have been harassing by cyber crime also.
Thank you, Brinda ji. Thank you so much for raising such question. Shirisha ji, then Trisha ji, then Uniza ji. Shirisha ji, please go ahead. Shirisha ji, are you here?
जी sir, सुन पा रहे हैं?
Yeah.
Hello, namaste. I am a consultant, housing finance consultant. I was in Ahmedabad. I worked with Seva for a long time, and I usually used to finance women to give them financial, empower them financially. So what I noticed was that once a woman is educated or is trained on how to manage her finances and help her start her own business, when she becomes independent, financially independent, she is able to take decision in the family, and probably she's also able to come out of the clutches of violence that happens domestically at her, at her home. My interest in joining this, this program is that I basically would like to know what are the laws that a woman can use when she is coming across such challenges, maybe on herself, or maybe if she notices something happening around in the society. So that is something I would like to learn, and also would like to know, like, generally when we go, somebody approaches a police station, police, I mean, it's just an observation that they would initially hesitate to register the complaint. So how do we, empower the women to, convince or, motivate that the police can register the complaint and some action can be taken on that part. So those things I would like to learn from this session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And indeed, we want to learn through this course about these. Trisha ji, you can go ahead. Trisha Devanji. Okay, Uneza Kadri ji.
Thank you so much. I come from a very corporate background, and I have decided to make the shift into social work. I work with an NGO that works with homeless young women and the marginalized community. The background that I come from, the people that I speak with, and the communities that I am with, I find it very difficult to explain people from the upper class background, from a privileged background, to explain the concept of oppression or violence against women. The social construct of oppression within these circles, they don't necessarily accept or understand. Through this session, I'm hoping that how can I unpack such a complex problem? Because for them, they see, oh, she is educated, she is living independently, she is being able to, make her own decisions. But there is this thread that really ties them back in making their own decisions, in speaking out something that has happened intimately, because it affects the larger family construct. So I'm hoping that through this session also I can unpack such a complex problem at a level that they also understand, as important it is for the marginalized communities too. But this class is also, I feel, I'm not sure, in denial of these things that are happening. So I want to be able to, explain to them also what oppression is.
Thank you, Nezaji, and keep us reminding about these important things which you are saying. Malvika ji, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. I am actually working as a journalist, and I have been brought up mostly in Bihar, along with different cities as well. But I don't have a question, but I have a thought in my mind, since I have been in Bihar so many years. So I have seen people are taking dowry in most of the cases where when men are in government jobs, they are, giving an undertaking that they will not take or encourage dowry. But then they are the person who demand most amounts, enormous amounts. So I don't think these pledges or these things of undertaking do help there. Because there are multiple factors affecting the social system, the dowry system. And I don't think that only by taking pledges it will, help us to eradicate the whole, system.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Malvika ji. Shalu ma'am, Vibhuti ma'am.
Yeah.
Please be brief. We have a whole session of Vibhuti ma'am left.
I think first one is about the funding. You can apply for funding. National Commission for Women has identified 3 important areas: cybercrime, reproductive rights of women, and domestic violence as a priority areas for support of funding. State commissions for women, also state government, it's a centrally sponsored scheme. That means part money is given by the state central government, union budget, and state governments also give matching grant. Third one is a PRI budget. Wherever you are, whether it is a municipal corporation, municipal council, or district authorities, they also have a budget, and you have to convince your corporators and elected representatives to use their area development fund. Each one is given area development fund. From that also it can be utilized. And CSR fund. There are several CSR who believe corporate social responsibility fund, whether it's a Tata Trust or IMPRI Trust or Mahindra and Mahindra, even Johnson & Johnson or Procter & Gamble. Some of these companies, for them, violence against women is an important issue. Second one, when you talk about the speak out, it's only when you know that there is an alternative. You should read Flavia's autobiography. How many times she tried to get out and she had to go back because she was not in it. There was no other support structure. She went to her relatives and mother and church and everything. It was only when the women's movement provided the support system that she could finally leave this thing. And if you see the analysis of divorces initiated in the family court by women, all of them have first seen to it that they are economically independent and they have a roof over their where they stay. Because their parents also, after marriage, women are not welcomed by their own parents. So I think this kind of structure, I fully agree that only by taking pledge, it is not going to solve the problem. But at a young mind, in the young mind, element of criminality is currently dowry is glorified as a custom. Hamare mein aisa hota hai, hamara riwaj hai. That should go that it is a crime against the state. After that, there are many other things we'll have to do. Economic self-sufficiency, self-esteem of women, sense of self-respect. I come from a traditionally dowry giving and dowry harnessing community, Patidars of Gujarat, central Gujarat. But it was my nani who at a very, very young age told us, Anyay karna nahi hai, anyay sehna nahi hai. You will never perpetrate injustice, you will never put up with injustice. If nothing else, we will have 2 rotis. So it was your nani telling you that don't put up with any nonsense of your in-laws or husband. My doors are always open to what we told. We never tell that. We always tell, whether it's a richest person or a middle class, we tell our daughters, marriage must work. We have invested this many lakhs. We have invested this many crores. So this is the thing which makes woman as a refugee. No, the married woman, she feels she has no house, neither her parents' house nor her in-laws. So that psychology has to go. That woman is not a refugee. Girl child is not a refugee. This is her home. No. Third one is that network of good practices. This is what the women's movement taught us in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that wherever there are networks of women, and you saw even during the pandemic, immediately within 1 week of lockdown, women's groups all over the India, they made a poster and put it up online that wherever you are, if you face violence, you can approach this organization. And they did not use landline, they used mobile numbers, so that 24 hours. I was a volunteer for a social apostolate group of Mumbai, where I was receiving continuously the calls of this thing and connecting them with the helpline. But we had 13 hospitals which started one-stop crisis center, emergency shelter within the hospital. So we had to connect them. So these kind of support structures we have to create. And I think Dr. Shalu Nigam also told us that this is, and even Madam Anju also said that without that, women will not venture. Unless they know that they have an alternative, that they will not. So that's why mobilization is important. The internalization of violence, I think it is, we have to deal with everything, our textbooks, our proverbs, the stories that we say, that masochistic life is the only thing which even our scriptures, they say that you have to put up with. So all that we have to fight against. So value system has to go. And even the stories that we tell in Gujarati, there is a king with 7 queens, 6 queens were very bad and they were torturing this favorite queen. So even those ideologies of subordination of women, brutalization of women, they have to go. Another thing is that women development cells, they are both like in rural and urban areas. The way we have women development cells and in the school, in the colleges and universities, we need to start that also in the school system. That is very important. I comment what Madam from Seva said, and I think that has been my experience also, that wherever women are economically self-sufficient, they muster up courage. Even if we have seen, like there is a very good study done by Delhi University professor of women who refuse to undergo sex determination test. They were from affluent family also, middle class family also, in a working class family. They were abandoned and thrown out by their husbands and in-laws, and they rebuilt their life because they had they had some support of starting their economic self-sufficiency. So it is a minimum necessary condition to lead a dignified life. The question of police station now after Nirbhaya tragedy, I think Dr. Shalwa will tell us in detail that how not writing FIR can be a punishable offense, and police officers can be demoted, suspended, and punished. So I think this kind of a legal awareness at an operational level, that when you go to the police station, when you approach the one-stop crisis center, when you approach the legal system, when you go to the family courts counselor, what are your rights as citizens, as a survivor of violence, that is very important. And for that, I think we need to do more and more awareness programs like this. Yeah, over to Advocate Shalu.
Yeah, I think you have already answered, those questions beautifully. Like, and we will take up more of these questions in our coming sessions also. So as Sir said that the time is less, so I'll not take more of time, but I just want to say that, we have a lot of expertise, even, the participants, they have been working in different fields and they have their own experiences. So maybe we can have a kind of a forum where we can, or a platform where we can, come together and we can start working together. We can share our experiences, our, whatever expertise we have, and together we can, take this message across to others also. So maybe this is just a beginning, and we can move forward on this.
Yeah.
So maybe then I should leave the time for your session, because that is more important. So I'll just stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shalu. Now I will, because my previous two speakers have solved most of my problem, so I will focus mainly on the interventions that we have done in last 40 years. So violence against women and the response of women's movement, that has been the concern in my presentation. And you have seen that the kind of scenario that we had during the lockdown and how women's movement responded. And is it visible? Is my PPT visible?
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Yes,
So I think the
Yes,
whole
ma'am.
trajectory of how more and more democratic rights of women and the women's fight for dignity, right from the time of 19th century social movement and the very freedom movement, and also after 1975, when the women's movement started organizing at a grassroots level, and I entered into women's movement in the year 1972 as a university student. But the kind of support that we got, first of all, the fight against the antiquated rape law, which focused only on penile penetration, and circumstantial evidences were not given any cognizance. So our fight was that we had encircled the Parliament of India with a women's chain, and we had asked for amendment in the Indian rape law, and justice to Mathura, who was a teenage tribal girl who was raped by uniformed policeman in the police station at the dead of night, and all in front of all the villagers who were screaming outside. So one of the very global instruments were also very helpful, especially when in changing the dowry law, mainly because of so many reported cases of dowry harassment of NRI weddings were also came to light, and there were protests by women's organizations, and women from Indian women settled in Australia, UK, Canada, America. They also staged demonstration in front of the Indian embassy to demand intervention of the state in case of dowry harassment. Then we also had, when India adopted and ratified UN Vienna Conference resolution on women's rights are human rights, it was included in the women empowerment policy, which India adopted, our parliament adopted in the year 2001, in which gender-based violence and the allocation of budgetary allocation for dealing with gender-based violence, creating structures and systems, one-stop crisis center, medical intervention, duty of the hospital to do proper case reporting, because without medical evidences, you can't even, with none of the cases of violence would stand in the court and the case would be dismissed. When we say that women's rights are human rights, we start in the stage of inequality. To go from that stage to equality, we have a constitutional guarantees, and to make this constitutional guarantee, which not on paper, as all of you have expressed, but in actual reality, what we need is equity, and that equity can come only through affirmative actions. And these affirmative actions are some of the protective legislation, and also the question of budgetary allocation, funds, functionaries to be earmarked, creation of more and more shelter homes, and also one-stop crisis center, counseling center, and massive gender sensitization program. Even after that, as you say, that many of your questions have been there, that even after equity, this kind of measures also, the prejudices against women are so deep-rooted. We have a history of 5,000 years of very, very toxic patriarchy, which is creating prejudice. And now in 21st century, when women are making massive advances in all walks of life, the backlash from the toxic patriarchy is much more. So what we need is a justice. And here comes the role of legal system. What we saw that the laws that we have, whether it was the first demand that we made in the early 80s was that criminal law, any woman who dies in the first 10 years of a marriage, the case should be examined and investigated by a higher authority so that it is not suppressed or it is not just cancelled by the lower level police station by accepting bribe. And that's why we got section 498, protection for women from domestic violence act. Here one of the participants also asked about signature campaign. When the Home Minister of India at that time in 2005 said that occasional beating or slapping is not a domestic violence, and immediately women's organizations under the leadership of Action India, Dr. Gauri Chaudhary, we all collected more than 2 lakh signatures within 1 week and submitted to the Home Ministry that this kind of statement is completely trivializing the intensity of violence that is happening in Indian arena, because at that time NFHS study has shown that more than 45% of Indian women were facing domestic violence, which is defined as economic, as a psychological violence, emotional violence, physical violence, sexual violence, and economic violence. Now, as you know, and Dr. Shalu Nigam also told us that marital rape is not criminalized in Indian justice system, because that was the major defeat we had after the Nirbhaya tragedy, where 18,000 suggestions were given by such citizens to Justice Verma committee. Only 2 suggestions were not accepted by Indian Parliament. Was a marital rape, that if we criminalize marital rape, it would disintegrate the system of family and the sanctity of family. And the APSA, where if the accused are people in the army or military, then the Parliament said that it will demoralize Indian army if we if we criminalize rape by army men. So these 2 were the major defeats. But now what happens, because of this DV Act, most of the women are using DV Act to address marital rape, because DV Act defines violence also as a sexual violence. Sexual violence, not giving money to run the house, is economic violence. Insulting you in public or not allowing you to use phone or meeting your friends or relatives, that is a emotional violence. Psychological violence, continuously downgrading you, is a psychological violence. And using physical force, that is a physical violence. So I think this act has been very creatively used in the Sessions Court, in the High Court, and also in the Supreme Court. You know, those 5 women who filed case for change in the Sharia law, all of them were survivor of domestic violence, and they had used the argument of this kind of cruelty they were facing. Now, coming to the question of sexual harassment at workplace, even before we got this order, the law in 2013, there were increasing number of women had filed cases of sexual harassment, especially those who were temporary people in the white collar job, and also informal sector worker, but they had to use their organizations. The teachers expressed that through their teachers union. Workers expect that through the trade unions had taken up. So the consciousness about sexual harassment at workplace had come in 1990. In fact, it was Albertina was a leader of in terms of creating a campaign on sexual harassment. She was the first person to come up with the draft of the bill on protection on sexual harassment bill, when secretary of a chief minister was sexually harassed by chief minister. He called her for a dictation and he harassed her, and she approached women's organization called Bailancho Saath. So and there are n number of success stories even in city of Mumbai. Like there was a woman employee in LIC, her boss asked her to do overtime, and at that is the time he harassed her. She ran out of the office, went to the trade union, where she was ridiculed that when so many men are unemployed, why should women work? And finally she came to our organization, Forum Against Rape, and we had a sit-in, like the picketing in front of LIC office. We got lot of support during the lunch break. Women from all that Nariman Point area is supposed to be, it's an office area. Women started coming. We wrote a play, Rekha Ki Kahani Uski Jubani. That was the script I wrote, and we enacted that play. It was directed by Shanta Gokhale. We enacted that play on the road. Massive support we got for that campaign. And finally, the accused officer was transferred, suspended and transferred. So even when the law was not there, when the mobilization from grassroots was happening, there are more than 5,000 posters we have, which women's movement generated during the 80s and 90s. This is one of the posters. They are there in almost all Indian languages. And Kali for Women, and now Zuban has published this poster women, and all these posters are in public domain that can be used for campaigning and advocacy. POCSO Act, as I told you, child rights organizations, it is mainly because of their dedicated work over last 3 decades that we managed to get POCSO Act, criminalization of child sexual abuse in it is community-based organizations, and the counselors, school counselors, they are the ones who provided data, because anytime you approach Law Commission, they want hardcore data. When we say something about one case or other case, they would say that don't be anecdotal. This story of yours is not a generalized phenomena. So as Madam Anju told us, that it is very important to create a database. I think some of you who are saying that, who have worked for 2-3 decades in the same field, I think you must do the data analysis and come up with a report, so that at least wherever you are, whether you are in a city or peri-urban places or in a state level data, if you have, then you can bring changes. Now, our parliament has unanimously passed women empowerment policy, which was adopted by 2001. 2001 was declared as a women empowerment year. And this policy is extremely important because it touches lives of Indian women from womb to tomb. So there are welfare measures, there are access to, what are the accesses we have in the legal system, in the school system, in the community, in the electoral bodies, all these things are there. Conscientization is a very important part, because one of you said that women from the affluent class, they are not accepting the question of violence. They are they are enjoying the privileges of patriarchy. So I think conscientization becomes very important, because we know that even the history of slavery has shown that slaves also enjoy slavery, because there is a constant hammering of valorization of patriarchal power and subordination of women. So women also internalize those values. And main thing, and the fourth aspect is of participation. More women in more powerful position is the slogan. If you are a 1 or 2 women, it is very easy to cow you down, to silence you, or even the witch hunting, character assassination is possible. Our experiences of Panchayati Raj institution has shown, and 18 states in India have 50% representation of women in Panchayati Raj institution. Wherever these women are united, they have been able to put forward their agenda. So this is very important. Now coming to the PCP-NDT Act, we have a Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Act. It all happened when we started in 1980, and immediately after emergency, during the emergency, we had given the petition to Ministry of Health to regulate a sex selective test, but we were told that that was the best way of population control. And then after the emergency in 1977, we ourselves posed as pregnant women to various diagnostic centers, and we got so much of data, because all these diagnostic centers were behaving like a gods and magician, no? And we first paper we wrote was a 4-page cyclostyle leaflet, and we had a massive discussion. We did a picketing in front of hospital, which boasted of 7,000, boasted to have done 7,000 sex selection tests in 5 years' time, and that created a major sensation. More than 50 newspapers in Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, English, Urdu, they reported about our petition. And after that, we also started Forum Against Sex Determination, Sex Pre-Selection. We contacted scientists, we contacted lawyers, we contacted social scientists, and we also contacted government bodies, the Ministry of Public Health Department of the government. And we had a PNDT Act first. The same health secretary, when he became a secretary of the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in Delhi Union government, PNDT Act came. The loopholes within PNDT Act were addressed by filing public interest litigation, and we have a history of important public interest litigations filed by women's organizations in such as Mahila Stri Shakti Sangatna in Hyderabad, Swadar in Mumbai, Forum for Women in Health in Mumbai, was True Trust for Reaching the Unreached in Baroda, or Nari Samta Manch in Pune, Penurimai Ayakam in Madras, Jagori and Saheli in Delhi. All of them got united and they took up so many issues of reproductive rights of women through public interest litigations at the same time. And the Drug Controller of India had to issue notice about public hearing on the implications of this new reproductive technologies. So there is a very strong legacy of activism in this area. Now, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019 also came as a result of massive grassroots level mobilization that transgender persons had done. And as Dr. Shalu Nigam told us, that there is also intersectionality, because even among the transgender persons, those who come from a very affluent background or a man, they can hide their status. Those who come out, and in case of people on the street, transgender persons on the street who are begging and who are forced to beg, who are abandoned by their own parents, or who have to do forced to sex work because they don't have any other support system and they are brutalized. For them, what is coming out? Coming out is a luxury which the upper caste and upper class transgender persons have. So that's what they have been saying. And in that also, now also mobilizations are going on, and where they have said that why do you have double standards in this law, where there is a less punishment for the rape of transgender person, which is only 2 years, and no reservation, no developmental investment has been made. It is only the organized effort of transgender persons and communities in Tamil Nadu that we have a developmental investment. Tamil Nadu government has done the gender responsive budgeting for the education, shelter, health needs, and also pension of elderly transgender persons. Kerala has completed its a census of transgender persons, and their needs, need assessment has done. Practical gender needs, strategic gender needs have been also taken care of. Kerala has also increased the social sector budgeting from 10% to 20% for the current 22-23 financial year. Now, the new problems that we are facing currently in the post-pandemic reality is forced child marriages, the kind of reality which was challenged by a person like Rakmabai Save in 1884. What we are seeing now is so many types of newer forms of violence against women and girls and sexual minorities that we are seeing, which Madam Anju said that it is a shadow pandemic. UN Women has declared it as a shadow pandemic. And against that also, there are grassroots level initiatives, especially as I told you, that distress calls which are made by the young girls and adolescent girls in terms of forced marriages. They have been addressed wherever there are mobilizations, and the my organization Vacha, which works with the adolescent girls, we have seen we started working with the adolescent boys so that they would also fight with their parents, and they said that please, you just can't send my sister back to the village and force her into marriage. She's a very good in studies, and we have more than 300 scholarships now for these girls, and they have been able to prevent child marriage, and they are now getting professional degrees. And I'm not saying that this is the only organization. There are many such organizations working with adolescent girls, because these are the cohort adolescent girls cohort is such where there are no state policies. You have ICDS program for 0 to 6 children. You have a universalization of education, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan for children in school, primary school and secondary school, but 14 to 18 age group of girls who are forced to drop out because they can't handle maths, science, and English. They are the ones who are most vulnerable because their parents see them as a liability, because they, in case teenage pregnancy happen, then what would they do? And that's why they are forced into marriage. What we have seen in post-pandemic period, child marriages have increased. In only one district of Maharashtra, about which we have statistics, we have seen that 6,500 girls have been married within 1 year, and because there are no such organization. But wherever the organizations are active, they have been able to avoid that. A legal awareness about violence against women is extremely important. I think one of you also asked that you want to know about the laws regarding violence against women. So I think in the coming 4 sessions, coming 3 days, what we are going to have is a detailed understanding on Dowry Prohibition Act, Indecent Representation of Women's Act 1986, Prevention of Immoral Traffic Act 1987. Earlier it was a CETA, now it is Suppression of Immoral Traffic Act. Now we have a Prevention of Immoral Traffic Act, Sati Prevention, Glorification of Sati Act, Protection of Children from Sexual Assault Act, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act, and also Pre-PCP NDT Act, Prevention of Domestic Violence Act 2005, Unorganized Workers Social Security Act, because we have a 92% of women are in the informal sector. Now they are also getting organized at a grassroots level. A lot of things are happening at a shop floor level, but which are not reported even by media. We have a participant who is a journalist, and I think they need to focus more on this 92% of women who are in the workforce, who are in informal sector where there is a law of jungle. Amendments in the Indian Evidence Act, which happened after Nirbhaya tragedy, I think more awareness needs to be made so that we can address and use the legal system more effectively. POCSO Act also, about which it is mandatory for every school to do gender awareness of both the parents as well as students, which is mandatory. What is safe touch, what is unsafe touch, and so many state governments have taken initiative and provided literature, created training manuals. In fact, you can download all the manuals from the Ministry of Women and Child Development's website. All the PDF files can be easily downloaded. Even Women Power Connect has come up with files and the training manuals which can be freely downloaded. There is an organization called Partners in Law and Development. They have created manuals in Hindi and English both, which can be freely downloaded for any organization for advocacy and awareness generation. Prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, about that also a lot of literature is there. Child Marriage Prohibition Act, I think that the nuances of that act are extremely important for all of us to understand, because when it comes to child, when it comes to labor force participation, we consider 15 as an age, or when it comes to voting, 18 is the age of majority, while in Child Marriage Act now, it is now the Marriage Act of this thing, 18 for women and 21 for men. Prevention of Witch Hunting Act, which only 2 states have passed, Orissa and Rajasthan. There is a lot of work happening against witch hunting, and around 8 states have also introduced the bill about witch hunting. Witch hunting has increased after the pandemic because they think that we have a new problem of corona widows and corona orphans. They are also being alleged that they are the ones responsible. Their evil eyes resulted in death of their husband. So some new challenges that we are facing. Cyber trolling is also very important, a new challenge that we are facing, very, very mind-boggling issue that we are facing. Transgender persons' protection of rights, and also the law about honor killing. The intercaste, inter-religious marriages are increasing, inter-tribes and inter-ethnic marriages are increasing. All these young lives are being lost by their own relatives and communities. We have some landmark judgments of the Supreme Court criminalizing honor killing and they are, first of all, they are not honor killing. They are crimes in the name of honor. So about that also, a lot is being done by the human rights organizations. Me Too movement has taught us that it is very important to collectively respond to the sexual harassment at workplace. It is not a woman against a man. It is all of us decent human beings against the toxic patriarchy. We need to stop victimization and victim blaming. When we want to the shifting from the victim blaming ideology to putting the blame on the accused is very important. And this is what we have learned. And whenever women are united, they have been able to address this issue. It's very effectively. We have seen that during the pandemic, crimes against women increased exponentially. These are the data from the National Commission for Women. And that is why the support system was created in terms of helplines. State governments created helplines, cities created helpline, women's groups created helpline. And the data of this helpline helped us. The rapid assessment studies were done to come up with the system, to put the system in place to address the issue. Now, this poster was very important and it was circulated during the pandemic. That what is the flow chart? It is a flow chart of stages of domestic violence. That what kind of responses that we need to have, what kind of arguments we need to put forward, and how the challenging the sexism and the biases against women in the legal system and at an operational level is very, very important. And the awareness about protection of women from Domestic Violence Act needs to be there more in the regional languages. The sign languages were created because we know that during the pandemic, women were in the proximity of the tormentor. They could not run out. In the normal case, they would ask for help. But during the lockdown, they could not even go out. So many different methods of approaching this women was created. If some neighbor of hers rang up the helpline, and we know that they were told that if you don't get, women are in the proximity of tormentor, they would just ask them to say wrong number. So once they say wrong number, you know that they are in difficulty, and we would call the police and intervene. So even during the pandemic, it was addressed. The issue of domestic violence was addressed, where the support systems were created. We all need to know, and I like the previous two presentations mainly because we need to first of all understand that and analyze what are the reasons, what are the causes and consequences. We know that during pandemic, boys' locker room, where the sexist, homophobic, transphobic jokes and objectification against the sexual minorities were received. So many messages we were receiving. We need to take them seriously. It is not a matter of joke. They also solidify the rigid gender roles. They create glass ceilings at the workplace, and they also perpetuate gender stereotypes. If we don't address them, then what will happen? Stalking, teasing, revenge porn, rape threats, harassment will escalate. And if we don't even challenge that, there will be sexual coercion, physical abuse. It can even lead to the murder. So it is very important to understand this thing. When it comes to cybercrime, during now National Commission for Women has taken the question of cyber safety very seriously. We have a very, very meticulously designed legal system to address cyber crimes. We have IT Act, and I think about that also more awareness needs to be created. We need to know about the IPC, Indian Penal Code, and various sections and how it deals with various types of crimes. And we also need to change the mindset of people. Here is a man who has written that how we talk about women and the whole rape culture that gets valorized. We can't be the passive observer. We need to challenge it. We saw that anytime there is a disaster, crisis, or very, very what you call man-made disaster or a natural disaster or a health emergency, the plight of women from the poverty groups, and that sensitivity that now we have developed, that if we learn from the previous experiences of reverse migration and circular migration, now the Ministry of Labor, with the help of trade unions and NGOs, it is evolving the strategy that such kind of human miseries are not created. There is an organization in Bangalore called Indian Social Institute. They were walking with the migrants. The researchers and the activists were walking with the migrants. They were giving them water and food packets, and they were talking to them, even medical services. Some of them were doctors. They documented what was happening when they were migrating. Okay, the migrants, and that you can download those documents, extremely insightful, walking with the migrants. No, that is these are the documents. You can go to the website of Indian Social Institute and download all their documents, which how they intervene in the time during the 2 years of pandemic. No. And they are very insightful because they are based on an actual intervention. Now, health organizations such as Medico Friend Circle, Janaswasthya Parishad, People's Health Assembly, or the Women and Health Forum, all of them also intervene, and they also documented what all happened during the pandemic, where the maternity wards were transformed into COVID ward. Maternity, the reproductive needs of women were not classified as essential services. That means even menstrual pad was not available. It was a Jamila B, a community-based worker of Mumbai. She contacted Commissioner of Mumbai on a Zoom call and said that there is a tremendous shortage of water in the bastis. People are demanded to wash their hands repeatedly. And if menstrual pad is not there, how are we going to maintain hygiene? And after that, menstrual pads were distributed freely by the state. So this kind of several such glorious stories are there. When it comes to the question Swashakti, which is a dedicated helpline that was created for the with support of UN FPA. iCall was created by TISS, and it was an emergency helpline. We also protest against gruesome murder of a young Dalit girl in Hathras that also took place during the pandemic, and a Twitter campaign was started. Involvement of man, organizations such as Man Against Violence and Abuse, Purush Uvacha, all these organizations were also supporting women's groups and the women's movement, and now also they are supporting them, that men's responsibility to combat violence against women. Legal reforms, the action agenda of the women's movement has been legal reforms, more women in more powerful position to challenge inequality in power balance, no tokenism, but the critical minimum. That means not 1 or 2 women, but the cluster of women should be there in all the decision-making body. Economic independence as a minimum necessary condition. So starting of one-stop crisis centers. Currently, only 6 states have one-stop crisis centers, either in the hospital or community-based. Andhra has it in community-based. In Delhi or Mumbai, they are in a hospital casualty ward. Visibility of gender-based violence in data system, financing for transformative change, use of communication media, gender responsive budgeting in addressing violence against women, utilization, the major unutilized fund of Nirbhaya fund. I think about that we need to creatively think and also pressurize, create a pressure group that states after states not using Nirbhaya fund. So resources are there, but they are not utilized because of the mindset of the bureaucrats. Accountability of governance structures and criminal justice system, massive program of gender sensitization, safety audit of public, both in public and private spheres, with the help of community-based organizations, NGOs, self-help groups, and Panchayati Raj institutions, because smart cities are safe cities. That is the campaign which is started by Akshara, a women's group in Mumbai, which also did safety audit with the help of 400 students from NSS, that which are the areas in city of Mumbai which are unsafe. Similarly, Jagori also did that in Delhi. And collective response is the only answer, because when we get united, we'll be defeated. These are some of the important works which happened while doing action, while intervening in the case of domestic violence, all these reports can be downloaded. They are in public domain, and they are done collectively by organizations such as Ali, Akanksha Seva Kendra, Alternate Space for Women's Collective Breakthrough, Care India, Sehat, Koro, Dwani, Humsafar, My Choice Foundation, Nirantar, Northeast Network, Sangini, Sukun, Swati, Swayam, Vishakha. Vishakha is a very big NGO which supported Babri Devi. It is in Rajasthan. Akshara, the kind of work it did, how they grappled with the shadow pandemic by supporting women survivor of violence. One Future Collective is a group of young women who also worked on domestic violence. Oxfam's project on violence against women. Sahaj and Sehat works with the One-Stop Crisis Center for women in the hospital, 13 hospitals of Mumbai, and also the data which was on the violence against women that was analyzed by this Ilana and Kingshuk Sarkar. This was the photograph of our demonstration in 1980, where we had encircled the Parliament of India demanding justice for Mathura. And these are some of the posters of the women's organization. The last poster, Aaj agar hum utte nahi to zulm badhta jayega. If we do not rise, oppression against women, exploitation of women, violence against women will escalate. This was the one which was created by all women's organizations together during the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, ma'am, for such an enriching session. Before concluding today's discussion, I would like the participants to drop their questions in the Q&A box and unmute themselves to ask their queries.
Yeah.
I would like Roshan Rajji to unmute himself and ask his query.
Meanwhile, we can go to Trisha ji.
Yeah.
Roshan Rajji, you can unmute and ask. Trisha ji, please go ahead. Can you hear us, Trisha ji?
Can I read and answer? Because I can read the questions.
Okay, I will ask Bhanvi, you can read some of the questions, then ma'am can answer.
Yeah.
Bhanvi, you can, yes, highlight the name also.
Okay. Ayushi Bhatti first. Because we have exceeded the time limit by 45 minutes. Yeah. That's why we should save time and finish.
Ma'am, those questions have already been answered.
Yeah, I have been answered because I was reading them even while speaking, no? I was reading the questions, so I think I have taken care of all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Difficult to explain. People of upper class, that also I have taken. Sorry to say, but men have been taking pledges not only verbally, but in written form against dowry in Bihar. Yeah, that is also there. That only pledges is not enough. It has to be, there are many more multi-pronged approach that we need to have. And enthusiasm and effort to address anemia among women and children. Yeah, Poshan Abhiyan. Yeah, that is there. But economically weaker section, yes. That has now become a very important after the NFHS data on malnutrition among women and children. Is there any study correlating rise of anemia and any other health issues or mental health issues? Yes, both mental health issues and anemia have increased in India, but we don't have metadata. We have to depend on the NFHS 5 data only, because we haven't received any SRS sample registration system data or the hospital-based data, because whole data system had collapsed during the pandemic. Now, larger brainstorming, do you think all women are the one who suffer violence? No, not all women. Those who are empowered, those who have a very dignified relationship with the male members in the community and family, they are not this thing, but it is their duty to join the campaign against violence against women. any policies being worked out for women's group and movement to adolescent. That's what I told you, that Vacha, Jagori, several women's organizations are especially focusing on adolescent girls and telling the state also to come up with the bridge courses for these girls who have dropped out or forced out of education system because they don't have digital connectivity. So I think all of them I have taken care of. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Ram Nagesh ji. Ram Nagesh Pujari ji. You can unmute and ask. Ram Nagesh ji, you are not able to connect. Okay. Charu ji has a very interesting question. She has been asking to. Okay. Any other participants? If you have any question, please raise your hand.
Because I was reading the question while speaking. So
yes.
Yeah.
Shweta ji has a question. Dr. Brinda also has a question. Okay.
Yeah.
Brinda ji, yes.
Ma'am, the same question, how we have to consult them, ma'am, and create awareness in the society. That's my main task.
Yeah, that is what, in fact, all the incidences I have told, they all began with awareness and then action, because awareness,
Your
analysis, and
presentation is
action.
very good. Your presentation is very good, but still we are facing a lot of problems. Each and every
Yes.
second I'm observing because I have
Yeah,
worked a
the
lot.
problem is very enormous and we are limited in number. So we have to multiply. Most important thing is that we need to multiply our strength, no?
Yeah, madam. But we are
Numerically and
conducting, no, madam, what I have observed in the past years, I have participated in many international webinars also conducted from Tamil Nadu, like that. But we are doing, and after completion, next to further steps, we are not taking into our hands. And we have to send all these for central government, especially.
Yeah, correct. We have to, I think we have to multiply.
We have to put resolutions. Some of the strong women, we have to take resolutions, and the same resolutions and some of the amendments which are framed by us must reach to the central government.
Yeah, yeah, correct. You are right.
Yeah, that's my main task.
Yeah. So Mr. Roshan Raj says that all women are not victims. They are also perpetrators. I fully endorse your statement that women are also perpetrators, because the baggage of patriarchal power and the patriarchal male supremacy is internalized by all. So many women who bask in the glory of patriarchal, the reflected glory of patriarchal power, and they can be as cruel. And in case of even that poster I showed you, last poster, Maya Tyagi's case, it was the woman police officer who instigated her constables to rape her. So I fully endorse your statement. We need to work. Just by being biologically woman, you don't become an angel. Yeah.
Right. We have Vaishali Larry. Yes, Vaishali ji, go ahead.
Thank you, Professor VIBHUTI Patel. That was a very interesting and very knowledgeable presentation which you made, and within 15-20 minutes we learned so many things. So I have a question, like in India, while we see that the female labor force participation is not very inspiring, right? And except for the last year, like we have seen few years where the participation has been declining.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the many reasons of declining female participation is stigmatization around women's work in certain sectors like garment or factory, etc.? And how do you think universities or colleges or even schools can take up more active role in sensitizing young women and men who are set to enter the labor market?
Yeah. So most of the studies have shown 4 reasons: childcare, elderly care, gender stereotypes and the middle class gaining more leverage due to globalization. And the fourth one is safety. It is not stigma, but it is the safety. Main thing is that worry after Nirbhaya tragedy, sudden drastic fall from 34% to 27%, and currently 23% of women in the workforce is basically these four are the reasons. Right from McKinsey report to the reports of the women's organizations at a grassroots level show that working, everyone wants people to bring more money. One salary is not enough in today's time of inflation, at least among the poverty groups. So in the garment, when you talk about the garment workers and all, it is the safety is a major reason rather than stigma. Stigma is a luxury for the upper class women.
Okay. And my question is that how universities and colleges can take up more active role in sensitizing young men and women who are set to enter the labor force, and how can UN agencies provide more support to this action?
Yeah, that's what the Anju madam's, Anjuji's presentation was, that what the UN Women is doing at 4 levels, no? First of all, gender sensitization, then making structures and systems gender responsive, and then also collection of data so that we can address the issue, gender responsive budgeting, and also working with the nation states to come up with the proper, very effective legal structure. So that's what she said. And I think university, we need to strengthen women's studies centers. We need to mainstream gender concerns in the syllabi. Foundation course should be there, which talk about all these issues. Why only IMPRI has to do this work? It should be done by the foundation course and by the WDC and by the anti-ragging committee, and so many. University has an equally important role to create responsible gender sensitive citizens. No? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Archana Padgaonkar ji, please go ahead.
Can we conclude, Dr. Arjun Kumar?
Yes, ma'am. One last question I'll take from Dr. Archana ji or Ipshita Mitra ji.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ipshita ji, please go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Ipshita ji.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Vibhuti ma'am, for that exhaustive presentation. It is always such a pleasure to hear you. So we were talking about how education is the backbone when we are talking about fighting gender-based violence and addressing such concerns.
Yeah.
So we are seeing how there have been certain deletions in history books lately.
Yeah.
And so I know this can be a bit far-fetched, but do you think that there could be a fear among feminists and activists that there could be erasures and deletions of women's movements from history books, or not taking up gender-based topics in syllabi, because education is something that we are constantly thinking about strengthening?
Yeah.
So what is your take on that?
I think it's a zigzag. Already the protest has started when the Home Minister made statement, no, in 2005 against the domestic violence, that occasional beating is not beating. Immediately women's movement responded. The same thing currently what is happening with the textbook. Already the signature campaign has started. Kumkum Roy also shared it with us, and it won't be too far-fetched to reach the level which the Afghanistan has reached, no, because
Right.
we are far more robust. And at one level, they are talking of gender sensitization, save the girl child, and also in the rhetorics also of the Ministry of Women and Child Development, or the kind of joint venture which the UN Women and this government has, even the Niti Aayog's pronouncements, and also the kind of policy, women empowerment policy we have,
Right,
even the recommendations of national education policy, which talks of gender sensitization from early childhood education. So I don't think it would be so easy. Under dictatorship or autocracy, it's easy. But when you have a parliamentary democracy, I don't think that can be complete erasure of whatever work we all have done over the last 40 years. I'm not so pessimistic.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Vibhuti ma'am, for taking the questions of our participants and answering them with so much detail.
Yeah.
So, as we come to the end of day one,
One way we can also go to Professor Patel to
Yeah.
summarize the session today for our concluding remarks. Ma'am, we have got very interesting questions today. Participants are so excited for this
Yeah,
session.
they're very
Please
really
summarize.
excited. Such a level of participation with 25 questions, 28 questions. It's really very, very encouraging that you all are so conscious and so proactive. Because of your involvement also, like me, you are also involved at a grassroots level. My concluding remarks would be like a woman's rights to live free from violence is upheld by international agreements such as CEDAW and also 1993 UN Declaration on Elimination of all forms of violence against women and women's rights are human rights. When only 45% of women seek help of any sort after experiencing violence, and we also advocate support to women and girls to access quality multi-sectoral services which are essential for their safety, protection, recovery, and especially for those who are already suffering from multiple forms of discrimination. So I think what emerged from today's discussion is that both state and the civil society organizations will have to come together to find ways to prevent violence against women. It has to be culture-specific intervention, focusing on early education, respectful relationship, working with men and boys, and prevention is still the most cost-effective and long-term way of stopping violence. We also need accurate data for various forms of violence to provide a better understanding of the nature, magnitude, and consequences of violence against women so that we can even address these issues. Data analysis of violence against women has helped to know what works and what doesn't work in case of this issue, and what are the practical gender needs where even men join with us, no? Because everyone, whole community benefits, and also the strategic gender needs that bring transformative change to prevent violence against women. Thank you very much.
Bhanvi, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. So as we come to the end of day one of a 4-week online certificate training course on ending violence against women, awareness of laws and policies in India, I, Bhanvi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Gender Impact Study Centers, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the day one session, that is Ms. Anju Dubey Pandey ji for her special remark, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji and Professor Vibhuti Patel ji for taking out their valuable time and giving an opportunity to the participants to learn from this online certificate program. I would like to specially thank Professor Vibhuti Patel ma'am for chairing the session. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you next Saturday, that is 15th of April at 4 p.m. for a second day of the certification course by distinguished experts Dr. Ranjana Kumari, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, and Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida. They will discuss the theme of violence against women and legal safeguards and other measures. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts and reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.